I
Oh yeah, you got to get these jokes in.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's gonna be funny because I was like, I'm starting to get second thoughts. I was like, man, either someone's literally gonna think this is one of those phone chat lines where you call in and it's a sex talk. They're like, oh man, my wife has been saying, people are asking me, so what's going on? And she's like, I don't even know. I don't even want to know. you know?
Yeah, my wife's been asking me like, "You're doing what?
Yeah, yeah,
Sex talk?
yeah,
Who authorized you to do that?"
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Father in heaven, bro.
Yeah. I think it's going to be great. So I've been talking to some friends and trying to invite people, but the more we uh, talk about this and trying to discuss and bring the light to it, it's like it's either it's very pure or it's very perverted, or it's one or the other. And I can see with just asking people about it, they're very standoffish on this subject. And I was telling people, just join in, enjoy it anonymously, and listen and ask questions or whatever. But too many people are curious about it, but no one's bold enough to say, hey, I got questions, and I really want to know these things. So,
No
but
one's
yet,
to say, "Hey, how does this work? Where
yeah,
does this go?"
yeah, because you're how long married, Bob? About a year now or so?
Barely just the tip over a year.
Yeah, yeah. We could use all the innuendos you want on this channel. I'm just a tip.
That
It's like,
wasn't
right,
an
Bob?
innuendo. What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah. It's just funny how there's so many spiritual and biblical innuendos that when you read it, and the book of Songs of Solomon or whatever. But I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Even the cool. Go ahead.
I've known her for a year.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
a biblical innuendo.
Yeah, yeah.
Boy,
I've known her. Yeah.
seculars say, "I knew her biblically."
Mm,
That's actually the word. That's the Hebrew word
that's
for
right.
becoming one again. Yeah, yeah.
Is
So
it kind of late there and stuff? About 9 p.m. where you're at?
yeah, it's close to my bedtime, but I think she'll let me stay up a bit later tonight. So
Say I'm learning. And I was telling my wife that the
he's
best
got
thing I'm
diagrams.
yeah, I'm about to show the Kama Sutra and all the moves. I decided to study more and dig into this since we started talking about it, and I'm realizing there's so much we don't know because it's been perverted too often. And either you're Jeffrey Epstein or you're missionary only position Christian once a year just to have children.
There's
You
no
know,
in between.
yeah, so I'm thinking like, well, with all the cults and everything else out there that do this, I'm thinking there has to be something in the middle. And one of the things that I read or was studying recently, they said the reason people have struggles in intimacy and stuff is because there's a lack of trust kind of thing. And if you trust your partner, you're willing to explore that area. And that's what love and sex and intimacy is. It's like an exploration, it's a friendship. And I'm realizing that too. It's just like, well, why are we always stuck, or why are we plateauing in our friendship or our intimacy in bed? And I'm realizing most of the time it's just we have this kind of trust issue that we haven't developed, and we think everything is wrong or doesn't seem right. But anyway,
No, that's
I
really
was
good.
hoping we can have some girls share on this perspective, but three's a crowd.
Whoever Anonymous 31 is, nice to meet you. I love you, and I'm glad you're
Yeah,
here. But
yeah. You
just
can
a
anonymously chat in the chat box.
yeah, I'm gonna anonymously send love to you, and I'll receive
Yeah,
it anonymously as
I
well. But I like what you're saying there. It just sort of made me think about how people are also afraid to explore things in their faith because
yeah,
the lack of trust that their heavenly Father, that are they actually saved? Is He going to forget their sins? Are they really one with Him? And they're afraid to look at things like Kama Sutra and things
yeah,
that the church and religion has said that like these things are wrong and twisted. And yes, they are. But the Bible says, Jesus tells us to assert our authority over it, that He's over all things and we're one
yeah,
with Him. So we can go into a room full of Karma Sutra books and not lose our salvation. We can bust them open, and you can not necessarily follow everything you see there, but you can let the Holy Spirit, you can let your Heavenly Father guide you and show you how to redeem that. And you can use it in intimacy and love, because love's not afraid of anything.
yeah. And
And
to
you
the
can,
pure, all things are pure. you
Yeah.
know? So if you're living a pure life, you definitely want to ask these questions. And there's like 1,000 questions to ask in this. So I was hoping more people can get on and share and stuff like that. But I know this is just the first of many. And I'll
Like, where's
post
the
this
clitoris? Can you
link
tell me where
later.
the clitoris is? Because I don't know where it is. Can you show it to me? Can you?
Yeah, yeah. That's a myth. It's a myth. It doesn't exist.
Oh, which one of us did? Oh, hey, I mean, 30 years, I finally figured it out. It's a
Yeah,
story
yeah. It's
made
a
up,
myth.
like Harry Potter.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Like George from Seinfeld. He's like, it's a myth, Jerry. It's a myth. I tell you, it doesn't exist. I've been looking for it. And it doesn't help. So anyway, I know my friends and other people I've been talking to about this, that they were all really asking questions and curious, wanting to listen because they don't have enough understanding. And I was hoping to uh here's Emerson. He's a friend from Brazil. Really cool brother.
oh,
Hey
cool.
Emerson, welcome brother.
Hey, bro. Nice to meet you.
But yeah, this is one of the subjects when I was talking with a friend of mine about it. He asked me, so what's pure or what's not pure in a marriage? What's pure or what's not pure in a bedroom? You know?
Mm.
And what are your thoughts on this, Bob? What would you tell somebody around that with those questions?
I would say it depends on your heart, on where it's coming from inside of you. For instance, for people, a lot of people, a lot of guys, including me, who were watching a lot of pornography, if you were um, bringing that mindset of objectification into the bedroom, that wouldn't be pure. That wouldn't be that wouldn't be love. That would be treating your wife like an object, which is not the way God intended for you to be treating her. You're treating her like your own body. You're
Yeah,
being one. You're treating her like a daughter of heaven. Now, that's not to mean that you can't, let's say, do something that you see in that, like, let's say, go down on your wife.
yeah,
Because if you're doing that from a place of loving her
yeah,
like she's a daughter of God, and you see that her whole body is a temple, and
yeah,
you're treating her with love, that's pure. That's your intention of your heart is pure there.
yeah.
It's not twisted or anything. Oh, there we go. That's pure. See your background. You're like,
There
that's
we go.
you. You're like dew on the grass in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. Like dew upon the grass is the king's favor, you know. So anyway, but you're right, Bob. I think if you approach it with a really healthy perspective, I was very similar in my mindset that when you're young, I was asking people, well, who teaches you about love and sex and marriage? Who teaches you that? Now I'm hearing there's more and more talk about it in some churches who are more liberal and are open to it and are sharing about these classes for married people. But if your mind has been tainted or perverted or you think something is wrong, you'll never bring it into the bedroom. But with Adam and Eve, when they were both naked, supposedly, they didn't see what was wrong or what was right. To them, it's whatever they just talked about, whatever they discussed, whatever they felt was right for them, you know. But I think too many times we've seen so many things that have hurt us or perverted us or messed with our minds that it's hard to see marriage and sex in a beautiful way. And when I answered my friend, I was like, I think whatever you and your wife agree on and find common ground is what's pure, you know. But there should be some kind of like learning, exploration, and understanding with one another. They shouldn't just be like, we're stuck. This is all we're going to do for the rest of our life. Because I've been married about 7, going on 8 years. And it's really easy to get stuck in a rhythm. And that rhythm is just something that you do. And then it's no longer a passionate, expressive desire. It's just like, well, it's just something we get to do. And it's just, young guys want to like, hey, how's it going? And this and that when it comes to sex. And to you, it's like, yeah, I like it, but it's nothing like super important to talk about because you're just stuck. Versus like, hey, every day we're exploring, every day we're learning, every day we're enjoying one another, and life is a really beautiful, a beautiful thing. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly, Paul. It's the freshness, the fresh bread. It says the daily bread.
yeah,
It's new bread every day. And if you get into a routine, you should never treat the most intimate part of your relationship like, oh, it's just a cup of coffee that I'm going to drink today, just like I drank it yesterday. you're not going to be appreciating it. And it's the most intimate aspect. I mean, it's a symbolic, it's a prophetic act of
Yeah.
Adam and
Yeah.
Eve becoming one again, of Jesus and the church becoming one again, of the unity of the body with the Father.
Yeah.
And it's a worship. So
Yeah.
would you ever want to get like, this is what religion does to um I don't want to keep trashing on religion, but this is what people happen
Trash it,
to
bro.
continue to do with God, is turn him into a routine, you know,
Mhm.
is well, I pray
No
because
longer fresh.
yeah, it's no longer a relationship. It's no longer love. It's a routine. It's You're not appreciating it. You're just taking it for granted. And you're like, this is
Yeah.
what I do. It's gonna last eternally. So I'm gonna do it the same way. Maybe in 1,000 years I'll switch it up. Maybe I'll move one leg this way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that'll
And
be
that's good.
missionary plus one
I
position.
have to help people because I myself get stuck in these ruts. And if I don't help somebody, I don't want them to suffer with 5, 6 years of just difficult marriage because they didn't want to talk about it. Would you say talking about it's very important? Like talking to your spouse openly about this subject? Because how did you apply your life in this? How did you kind of work through things? Because I know everyone's kind of timid to talk about it and share
Oh
their
yeah,
needs.
I'm not timid. I'm an open book. I'm a blossoming flower. You know that, Paolo.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I mean, on our way, our story is a bit different.
Yeah,
Our wedding night was incredible. I prayed into it. We had stayed. We were only courting for 6 months. Only knew each other for 6 months, but we stayed pure. Um, with a little bit of pushing up against that boundary, but we stayed
yeah,
pure.
sure.
And then our wedding night was incredible. I mean, I was praying into it faithfully, and it was everything. But then, well, then life sort of gets in the way. Then I'm sort of like maybe doing something not with, later on, like during our honeymoon, like maybe
Yeah,
I'm doing something in the bedroom without like
yeah, yeah.
pureness in my heart, like something else on my mind.
Discovery.
Maybe maybe
That's
she
right.
yeah, maybe she's feeling like dirty today, so she's not
Yeah,
feeling beautiful, so she's not
yeah,
giving me the vocal cues that I'm used to that
yeah,
say, "Hey, you're doing a good job, keep going." Instead,
yeah,
it's like, "What's going on up there? They're mixed signals.
yeah,
Somebody is
yeah,
in the
yeah.
cockpit. They're not saying what they need to say." So I'm like doing something, and they're like, "We don't like that, but we're not really saying it."
That's
And
right.
so that sort of, we didn't talk about it at first. And then all of a sudden, a few weeks later or a few months later, it comes up and it becomes this big problem. And
Yeah,
it's like, well, are we ever going to have a time like that, like our first night? And so then we were just like, well, she doesn't like it if I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't like feeling like that. And so we're just going to compromise and just do this one thing, and this is fine and pretty good. So we did that for a few
yeah,
months, and that was
yeah.
just intercourse, no
Sure,
fellatio, no going down on each other,
sure.
different
Just
positions.
yeah,
But
just standard stuff, but nothing new, no discovery.
yeah, but no explosions, no fireworks, no like
Yeah,
beautiful fresh exploration.
yeah,
And then finally, because we do continuously talk about everything, it finally came up, and it was a long conversation, difficult conversation, but then it was like, okay, you know what? Let's go back to the exploration. Let's try to forget the record.
yeah. That's
Love
good.
doesn't keep records of wrongs. So let's try to forget everything. Not try to forget. That's not what I'm trying to say. But let's start fresh. Let's start fresh with a newness in our minds and in our bodies. And so I did a little bit of like extra research, and I would pray into it, and then we got into the bedroom, and it was incredible fireworks again. It was
Yeah,
better than our wedding
awesome.
night. It was beautiful, and it was explorative, and it was fun. We were reliving the wedding of our youth, even though we'd only been married a year.
Yeah,
And now every time it's a new experience, and it's very intimate, and it's very raw and passionate
yeah,
and fresh. And so yeah, talking about it is the most important thing. I mean, it cannot be it's the hardest thing too, because like
sure.
guys' egos, they're like, come
That's
on,
right.
I'm doing a perfect job. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know what I'm doing down there. I know all my ways. I
yeah,
know
yeah,
what it is. It's not a myth. Um, and and women, I mean, my wife, she can be very um granular about like well, you weren't doing this, you weren't doing this, you weren't doing
Yeah.
that, you weren't doing this,
Yeah.
and it can just
Yeah.
tear you.
Yeah. 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 You're right.
And but you get through that. 'Cause you love each other.
Yeah.
And,
But at least you have the communication. That's the beautiful part. You
yeah.
know, if you don't have that, you're struggling with your spouse and you're not talking about it. And see, the reason I wanted to do all this, and I've been talking with you on and off about this, is if people don't voice the normal healthiness in it, and to show you that you as a man to want to be intimate with your wife all the time is normal. It's not like you're sick or you're perverted for desiring intimacy, because women express this. Another thing I've been learning, the way women feel intimacy and love is through like hugging, snuggling, touching, gentleness, nothing sexual per se. But guys only, and they can feel connected to you. They're like, wow, I feel so connected to you. And she's rubbing up and down your body and she loves you and she's so connected, and you feel connected too, but you want to take it a step further, because guys get connected, or the way our minds work, or the way science or whatever explains the way they get that sexual release or something, that's when they feel connected. But what if your wife always wanted to snuggle and hold hands, Bob? Would you still choose to get married? You know, would that still be okay? Because you're like, she's like, well, I feel connected and loved, you know, I don't want to. And you're like, yeah, but I don't feel connected and loved. So I think that there's an important communication, how, like I said, when you were mentioning the clitoris, a woman can be pleasured externally while the guy's pleasured internally when he's penetrating. So it's like that has to be shared, because it's just the way we receive and give love kind of thing. And I never thought, like, you know, my wife or other women would say, well, you just want sex. You know, women would say, guys just want sex. And I'm thinking that's not true. That's not the only thing they think about, but it is a very big part, because everything building up to it, the relationship that you build with one another, the way you connect. Because you know how they always say women need a romancing and love and attention and care, and then they'll open up. And I'm realizing, well, how come women have a double standard? Why don't they romance, care, and love the man, hoping that they can get lucky that night? Well, they don't care. They're like, you're a light switch. A guy, you know, you walk in, you're like, hey, I'm ready. And he's like, oh, okay. You know, I was like, well, what about us? And I started realizing that the talk has been going on where it's like, well, women want equal rights. Hey, I want the rights that women have. The right to be wined and dined and loved and taken, you know, someone to take care of me and someone to care for me and respect me. I want that too. That's not much to ask, because they're asking for the same thing. And I think it should be a healthy back and forth. And we can get into, like, there's so many weeks to cover so many topics of like just having a healthy love or intimacy schedule with your spouse or partner if you're busy. You know,
Mhm.
one of my friends who I was talking to, it was nice to speak to girls on this subject, where she's like, well, me and my husband, you know, I'm always tired, or it's late night, or we're exhausted. And I'm like, well, do you schedule it? Do you plan it? Do you plan your day around that intimate moment? Well, you do around your prayer life, or you do around work and other important things. Well, why don't you do that around that? If you feel the best during, you know, lunchtime, well, he better come home for lunch, and you guys better have your little soiree, because it's like you have to work with each other on this subject, because you can't just, I'll give you my dregs at the end of the day and I hope it's okay. You know, there should be something like where we plan like a vacation. Instead of us planning a trip to Hawaii, we plan a trip to the intimacy chamber with our wife, to learn and explore and to love one another and to care for one another.
No, totally. Because also we found something we found was like, you get aroused at different times. Like
Mhm.
she's like, there was it's the beauty of communication, because she's like, you're always excited after we eat a huge meal.
Oh yeah.
I've got a bunch of food inside of me and
Yeah.
I don't need anything else in there.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and,
That's right. I've heard that one. I've heard that before.
so you're always excited at night right before we go to bed and in the morning, and not when
Yeah.
I'm feeling like all pretty and have pretty myself up. So actually, when you mentioned last time we talked, Paul,
Yeah.
about like scheduling, I immediately was like, let's try that. So I was like, okay, so you're not ready right now in the morning, and so
Yeah.
let's how about 4:15? 4:15, let's go. And we actually had a fight, a
Yeah.
disagreement, not really a
Yeah.
fight, at 3:30. But
Yeah.
then at 4:15, she comes from the bedroom, and the magic,
Money.
it's
And
on.
it, see, but did it, you feel stronger in your marriage for it, right? Did
Yeah,
you feel
yeah.
that
And also the intentionality is there. You know,
there?
it's
See,
romance. It's
and you
romance.
know you're not going to escape it, because the first thing that marriages fall apart is when the intimacy gets taken out of the picture. The marriages seem to fall apart, you know. But if your fights can't stop that moment, and you press through and you make love with that anger and passion and frustration, and you break through it, you'll have victory. You
Mhm.
know, you'll have, over that. Oh man, I don't know what I was doing. I'm so sorry. It creates such a bond. And I think that's so healthy. But some women are schedulers. Some are, everyone's different. They have their own kind of flow, but, you know,
Yeah, and you don't want to get too routine about it. I mean, don't
sure,
schedule everything. Also have some
spontaneity.
some all spur of the moment. Like she's cooking those pancakes, you're really liking how she's cooking the pancake.
That's
Also,
awesome, man.
I mean, if you live alone, if you don't have kids,
Yeah,
use other aspects of the house. It's fun.
yeah,
It's your house.
yeah,
Just kick the dog out. They
yeah.
don't like when the dog watches.
Yeah, that's awkward. I was gonna say, something you mentioned, right, that a man after a big meal desires that, and that's true across the board, I think, because part of it, the science, when I did the research on it, it's because of all that food and all that processing's pushing on certain glands and certain things in the body, uh, and it creates more stimulus to want to, as things are moving and processing. So it's like a natural experience. But that's why if the wife doesn't feed the husband or take care of her, and he doesn't feel full and like, then there's less desire. His belly's empty. He's not thinking sex, he's not turned on or something, but if she keeps his belly full, as I said, as I heard, and the ball's empty, the marriage would be strong. It's a crude way,
Oh,
but
no, I
it's
think it says that in the Gospels.
say again,
um,
Bob. Say again.
I think it says that in the Gospels.
Mm,
John 2 too. But
yeah.
also with that as well as when you're full, your body is saying that you're safe.
Yep, that's
You're
right.
safe. I mean, if
You're
if
in a
you have
good
time to
place.
stop and eat, then you're in a safe place, and it's also a good time to procreate. Safe. So your body's saying that to you.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's interesting. It doesn't do that for the women.
Yeah, I wish it did, because you're right. It's like, hey, when my belly's empty, when I feel best, it's right around when the man's never in the mood. So, and it's like, all right, well, time to work up and warm up the pipes and warm up the body, because I'm like, well, I'm sleepy, or it's early morning or something. It's like I gotta go to work. I'm not, sometimes it's never the right moment, but I think this is part of where you have to communicate with one another and figure out what works. And I was like, I wish I could share more things, but go ahead, Bob. Share. Go ahead.
No, I mean but it's also true. Like in the bedroom, like communicate to each other in the bedroom. And I know it can be a turnoff for a woman, especially when it's your husband who's been married to you for like 8 years or so. I mean, even like 1 year, when he doesn't know what to do exactly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe he's been doing something wrong for a long time, and the woman hasn't said anything to him. But
Yeah.
that you got to cut that off. Like you gotta prune that vine, and like find a way to communicate in the bedroom where it's romantic, where it's fun, where you're like, yes, push there harder, yes, yes,
Yep.
do that more, like
There. See,
offer.
that's communication. I think that's so key. That always gets left out, because the only place when I ask somebody, where do you learn all these things? If it's not from a healthy setting or from people, they said, oh, I learned that from porn. And I was like, and then you watch it and you're like, that's perverted. You shouldn't enjoy it. You shouldn't like it. You shouldn't communicate and agree what you like or don't like. And then we bring that in, and I feel like it ruins things.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. Well, it's because it's back to the objectification thing. It's back to the idolatry. Like porn is the idolization of sexual pleasure. It's the idolization of pleasure. It's not about relationship. It's about getting somebody off and getting somebody else off and everybody watching them get off.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking to each other in the bedroom, yes, it's about how to please, but it's also about an intimate relationship of, I mean, love is pleasurable. It's the love over the pleasure. It's the relationship over the pleasure, not the pleasure over the relationship. It's a question of a hierarchy of your values. So yeah, if you're in a loving relationship, I mean, if you're hugging your wife weirdly,
Yeah.
You'd want her to tell you like, hey, you're not hugging me, you're hugging me weird, why are you hugging me like that? Like,
Yeah.
because it's unpleasurable. I mean, if you're talking to somebody and you're just talking over them the whole time, that's not a relationship and it's unpleasurable. So in the bedroom, you should feel free to tell each other what feels good, what feels bad. And in with that, I mean, try to focus on what feels good, because then they're just going to do more things that feel good. If you just keep criticizing them, you're going to be breaking them down. And guys, we have we're sensitive. We're very, very sensitive. We're hard on the outside, very sensitive on the inside. Especially when it comes to the bedroom. Guys are very, I mean, I
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah.
it can be very difficult. It's like, hey, you're doing that like badly. Like that,
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna have to take a
Hey,
different.
I had compliments the other day, Bob. So I don't know, man. Yesterday, my wife was like, "Hey, I thought this wouldn't be right or wouldn't feel good, but hey, it was amazing." And I was like, "Oh, good." But she came into it like, "I don't feel good. I bet this is gonna suck. I don't like this." And she's just giving me 100 reasons, and her brain and her mind is like not like there, but she's scheduling it, and she's, she knows, and it's just kind of set up to, okay, we're gonna do this thing. But I was like, you know what? Why don't you focus on me? Let's just focus on this moment and not what could be or what would be or what's right and what's wrong. And then it's like when you get rid of all the stuff and you're in the moment with your significant other, you kind of connect better versus like worrying about what could be or shouldn't be, or if, well, what if it doesn't feel right? Well, what if it will feel right? Because I definitely wanted to get through a lot of testimonies of my own life, and my wife has shared a lot of our own intimacy life and the struggles we went through for years. Because for years we've had like next to nothing for about 2.5 years of our first few years of marriage. It was like next to
Wow.
nothing. I say nothing, but there might have been a blue moon here or there, but
Yeah.
it was just she had her mindset of, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why. I don't know why there's the right thing, or why does it feel right or wrong, or if I don't feel good, adding this to it, why would this help me? Like you mentioned, if I feel full all the time, or women feel bloated, I'm realizing this is a across the board thing. There's monthly things and whatever. And then it's like, well, the kitchen's closed, and I realized like, okay, we need to deal with this thing. And if we talk about it, which we talked about it, and it just wouldn't cover it. So I had to learn how to walk in love and respect her and take care of her while she grew through that, because most marriages end up in divorce when you close the kitchen and say, you know what, I don't want to. It's like, well, enjoy being single then.
That's so good, Paul. I mean, big kudos to you for walking that out in patience and love. I mean, that's really difficult, but it's also, it's just, it can be so easy sometimes. I mean, for if there's a pattern of failure,
Yeah.
within either, whether it's in the relationship or it's in somebody's mind, and the doubts, they just become reality. And it's fear, really. And it's fear of like it never being able to change. Like my wife and I had the same conversation when we were just doing the general thing over and over again. She's like, well, is this ever going to be
Yeah.
different? Like maybe we're
That's
just
right.
having a mediocre sex life for our whole marriage. Like
Yeah.
maybe that's what I deserve. Maybe that's what God wants for me. It's
That's
like
right. That's
all
right.
these spiraling questions.
Yeah.
But
That's
it's
for
it,
watching all that porn, Bob. That's why now your marriage won't be blessed.
yeah, now your marriage won't work.
Yeah.
Salvation on your marriage. But the important thing is to be patient and to continue in faith, and hope of like the happy ending that Jesus has for everybody. And you keep that communication open, and like you did for a while, you kept trying,
Yeah.
kept talking, and then eventually you do come back to it, and with faith and hope and maybe a little bit of research,
Yeah.
uh, you you do break that old record, and you
Yeah.
do create a new stem, a new vine, and you'll be so surprised. And like she was surprised, like I like how like focusing on you and forgetting about the other, that's a huge thing for women.
Yeah.
If there's like something else going on, if they're thinking about something
Yeah.
stressful thing going on, it's not going to be a joyful
I
experience.
think that's helping them reassured, because sometimes, like, no matter how beautiful the woman is, my wife is a gorgeous 10, she's beautiful, and in the end, it's like, are you sure I'm beautiful today? Because I don't feel beautiful, you know? And I think it's that part of us constantly desiring them that builds a healthy marriage too. because we can get to a place where if there's fights and arguments, you can just start like, you know what, I'm not into you. You know what, you haven't been working out. You know what, you aren't doing everything that I like, so I don't like you. I think this is where taking the lower room and humbling ourselves to love our spouse where they're at and not expecting them to do it the way we want to. You know, you
That's so
seen that
good.
happen?
You gotta create a context of being in wonder of your wife
Yeah.
and her, you too. I mean,
Yeah.
when if every day for a month you tell her how beautiful she is, with authenticity, of course, you tell her how beautiful she is. You're like looking at her body with just
Desire.
love, desire, yeah, and
That's
you're
right.
like, you're touching her, you're hugging her, you're squeezing her butt, you're
Oh yeah.
showing, you're giving a context. The water that she's immersed in is your love and your appreciation of her. And I think within that context, when it's like 98% love and desire,
Yeah.
then you can say like, hey, I noticed like this
Yeah.
thing, like, and I'm working on that too for me. Like, I think we
Yeah.
should both work on that together. And it could
Yeah.
still be a difficult conversation, but
Sure.
at least you've created that context
Sure.
of love and desire. Like,
Yeah.
the reality is that you truly love her, desire her, and want the best for her. If you're not doing that, then you never be able to have those conversations, because once you bring
Yeah.
that up, that's the only thing there is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like you just plop in a huge whale on a tiny little puddle.
Yeah. Hey, and they're speaking of my significant other. Here she is. Maybe she
Oh,
can push me under the bus a little bit.
oh yeah. Let's get the
Well,
feminine perspective. You've just been
yeah,
lying the
yeah,
whole time.
yeah. Hey, Booby, we needed a woman's perspective if you want to chime in.
Yeah, Casanova over here has been making up.
Yeah, making up stories. Casanova. So anyway, I don't know, Noel, if you're in a good place to chat, but you can listen in. But um, yeah. So I was also going to share the beauty of like not just in marriage or like before marriage, Bob, because I know I wanted friends to people who listen, who are gonna listen in or watch this on YouTube later on. What like advice or suggestions you would have? Say you're 25 or you're 35 and you want to get married. Like, how do you walk into marriage expecting something? Because most of the time you come in with your uh, you know, I think marriage should be like this. I think it should be like that. And then next thing you know, it doesn't happen. And then you end up in divorce. It's like, how would you approach it? At say, years later down the line, you would approach marriage. What advice would you want to give yourself for
Oh
this?
man. Well, uh, kind of throw all your expectations out the window.
Good
Um,
idea.
yeah, first do that, and don't try to check any boxes, because that's something I tried to do. At first, I tried to like check off, like, get a wife box, and then that failed. And then I was like, okay, get a career, check that box, then get a wife. That's how the list should go.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's not what happened. God brought me a beautiful, beautiful woman, before I even had a career, before I had anything really on paper. You would have looked at my resume on Tinder and said, no way.
yeah,
And I mean, I met the love of my life that way. So first, throw out your expectations, and don't compromise on someone.
yeah,
Um, I When I met my wife, God told me she was the one, and it was so perfect. It was a fairy tale. That's possible for everyone. I'm not saying that there aren't like obstacles and bumps in the road, but it's that the depth of, of chemistry
yeah.
is so real and visceral, that you can't ignore it. It's just the water that you're swimming in. So stop watching porn. That's what I tell myself. I don't watch porn.
That's a good advice, Bob. So stop doing that. Well, what can we change it with then? Because, like I said, porn's such an addictive substance. Women, I don't know how if they struggle with it as much as guys do, but in the end, it still has such a draw because, say, you're not intimate with your wife, say you're a single bachelor. Now what? They're like, well, just stay single. And I realized that if guys stay single, the Bible mentioned get married or don't burn, because a lot of times you're just burning with passion and desire, and in you you're innate to procreate and wanting to, spread your seed. But you know, what's an alternative then? Because if you can't get married, what about before marriage? Should you be sleeping with your different partners or something? How does that work? What's your thoughts on that, Bob?
Yeah. Well, no, don't be sleeping with a bunch of people. Instead of doing that, dive into giving yourself. Dive in, push that sexual energy towards your other passions, your what you're studying, what you're
Yeah.
pursuing, your work. Start working out a lot. Get those 6-packs going.
Yeah.
Start, put that passion into God. I mean, hopefully you know Christ at this point. I didn't when I was 25, so I was the lost cause. but if you do put that passion, because that's all, it's energy. You can move it other places, and you find, even when I was 25, when I was doing other things, when I had stuff going on, hang out with friends, I wasn't constantly like watching porn and masturbating. I was doing other things. But when I didn't have other things going on, I was hanging around the house a lot. When I was constantly seeing things that were going to trigger my sexual desire, then I was always, doing that like 2-3 times a day, or whatever Matthew McConaughey says in Wolf of Wall Street.
All right. Yeah, well,
So
you're right, because
yeah,
I'm glad you brought this up, because the desire to want to do it several times a day is so normal and natural in a man. And I said, if I can give only one piece of advice for guys or even women who don't know this about their husband, I said, they want to do it more than once in a blue moon kind of thing. You might want to, but I said, he can recharge, reload, and do it again. Give him some time, let him take a break, meet up with him again, or just lay there and snuggle, or come back again later the day. And I was like, he's still ready to go. And some women, they're like, I've never talked to my husband about that, and he's not going to tell me I desire you multiple times a day. What is she going to think? What a horn dog. What's wrong with him? How come he's always so horny? What's wrong with him? And it's like, there's nothing wrong with him. I feel like I said, do you tap your husband out to where it's ultimate fighting? She has you in a headlock and you're tapping out. You're like, hey, I'm done. Get off of me. Let me breathe. Is that happening in your marriage? And I'm like, well, I think it should be a healthy part, not every time, but at some point there should be this desire to where you're both tapped out, versus like, God rested after he created, after he there. And if we're not resting, if we still got energy to go, it's like we didn't finish working yet.
we gotta create something else.
Yeah, we got to create something else. And I think that's part of creating. Yeah, we got to name some things. So I think that's part of marriage too, that subject needs to get covered, that but if the guy gets tapped out, it takes about 48 hours for all those boys to get reloaded. And I'm thinking, like, why don't they know that? Why don't people share that? Because some wives are like, well, my husband desires me every day, and I think something's wrong with him. And I'm asking, like, well, do you spend time or do you have sex with your husband every day? And she's like, well, yeah. And I'm thinking, well, that's not healthy. I'm like, well, why is that healthy? Because it's like you literally can't miss a day. I said, is that literally what's on his mind? I said, why don't you make him feel so confident? And why don't you tap him out to where he's like, honey, give me a day or two to relax. I'm beat. I was like, how come that doesn't happen? I said, you see, that's confidence. And I heard from another woman sharing her perspective, how she said, my husband used to chase me around the house. He'd always try to grab me. I couldn't even bend over because he'd grab me and start trying to make love to me everywhere. And I thought, what's wrong with him? And then I realized I need to engage him. I need to pursue him. And as soon as she started pursuing him and showing him that, hey, it's always available, the kitchen's always open for you, and he felt that love and confidence, she said he quit pouncing on me everywhere I turned. He quit doing that. He became a stronger man. He loved me more. He brought home the bacon. He took care of me 1,000 times better. And I realized that if men don't have sex on the brain, they would literally fly to Pluto and back. But
Yeah,
if they have
yeah,
sex on their brain, they can't function but beyond a day or two or a week without thinking about it. And then that takes up all our RAM, our random access memory. Our brain is focusing on certain things, So I'm
I love
realizing
that.
that's a really big key.
That's so good. Is she going to be on? That your friend that said that? Is she going to be on the talk?
I was hoping she can get on because that would be life changing to get some women's perspective, because it's not an inappropriate subject. It's so healthy, And yeah, I was definitely wanting some women to get on, but I think this will be a good first call for people to listen in and see how the chemistry flows, because I'd like other people to share or type and we can cover subjects, because I want to do this for at least 7 weeks, once a week, because it is nerve-wracking, Bob, to talk about these kind of subjects, because we got to get the women's opinion. But you know what her words were? I never knew this, and I've been praying for 10 14 years, God, send me someone to talk to about sex, because women, when they advise other women, it's not coming from a man's perspective. It's coming from what I think works. But you're not a man, you don't know what we're thinking or how we desire it, and we won't even say it because it sounds perverted. I used to think something was wrong with me because I desired my wife every day. I'm thinking, well, what's wrong with me? How come I desire her? And it's just like, there's nothing wrong with you. I think that needs to be the main message. You're okay, you're built right to desire your wife, and your wife maybe doesn't desire you. Maybe that's a good thing, because that way you're building that bond and that desire to where there will be a mutual thing. And I think Mark Gungor, we can post some links of different marriage gurus who talk on this subject. He's like, well, if you got to take care of your wife for her to do that, maybe that keeps the marriage together longer, because you're helping her, and that way there's a reward for intimacy, but
Mm.
without it, it's sometimes something that's missing,
No, yeah, I love what you're bringing up, Paul, with guys desiring their significant others every day, because and like having to like reload, because a guy, I mean, at least from my personal perspective, what the best thing is pleasing your wife, and
Yeah.
is really giving her an incredible experience,
Yeah.
and also you're partaking in that,
Yeah.
and you're also having an incredible experience. And then when that comes to its completion, you're tapped out. You guys just both had
Yeah.
an incredible, intimate,
Yeah.
fun, revelatory experience with God. He's there. And if if it doesn't happen for 2 or 3 days after that, you're not itching for each other.
That's right.
But there's also that firm foundation of like
Yeah.
co-creation of passion and showing each other love.
Yeah.
I mean, what makes me that guy always reaching for his woman was like he's insecure. He's like
That's what I
constantly.
said it. That's what I said. As soon as I heard it, I was like, your husband's insecure. That was the first thing I said. And it's like, I know the guy. The guy's a great guy. You would never guess he's insecure. But it's not for us to make fun of other guys. It's
No.
for us to it's for us to see ourselves in it.
Yeah.
Because if I was constantly, so like, it's like, because I'm not getting any, that's why. And I asked her, like, are you leaving him satisfied? Are you like showing him that you desire him? Or are you like, ew, let's get this over with, come on, it's nighttime, we're trying to go to bed or whatever? Or are you just rushing out of the room? And she's like, well, the latter. And I said, so you're not bringing passion, desire, intimacy? She's like, well, no. And I said, well, guess what? Some other hussy will come around and she'll give him everything that he's asking for. She's like, well, I feel like I'm losing my marriage. I'm like, you will if this keeps up. And I was like, are you doing everything you can? She's like, well, no one talks to me about this. She's like, I studied a little bit before I got married. I read some articles, but then that's it. And then I haven't done anything. And when you read Cosmo and everything that women tell you what works, it's like, no, you need to ask your husband what works. And if he doesn't, then you need to ask or find a healthy place to learn, because there's 1,000 articles that aren't perverted. They're if you look up, sexual things and this and that, most articles that will come up are doctors and advisors and like really healthy things. Rarely it'll just come up porn unless you're searching for that. I don't know how I know this. Don't ask Bob. It's from experience. But when you're researching, what you're looking for will come up from a healthy perspective. And and if we don't learn from other people, then we got to learn somewhere. And my wife and I were like, well, let's let the Holy Spirit teach us. Why doesn't God teach us about this? But if we're not open to learn and explore and experience and be led, then we're literally just stuck in the same rut, you know. And it's important to explore and learn and find out what's right, what's wrong. And that's what'll be good in a marriage. Because that's what my friend asked me. He was a single guy and he's in his 40s, and he asked all these pastors, and everyone gives him a bunch of rules of do's and don'ts. And he says, well, Paul, what do you think is right and wrong in a marriage? And I said, it's whatever you two agree on. And you guys have to test all things and hold on to which is good for you. Because how do you know unless you've tested it many times, you know, or even discussed it? But we can get into the spiritual aspects of marriage one day, but I feel like the practical aspect is the missing link, because the spiritual, you know, love your wife as Christ loved the church. We hear that in church all the time, and we hear all these Christian sermons, but it's like, well, how? Well, how does this really work? You know?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's so good, Paul. And it's really, yeah, God wrote his law in our hearts. It's really your conscience.
Yeah.
You go into the bedroom, just listen to your conscience and talk about it. And for the guys out there, I mean, talk about it. Like guys are so closed up. Like I'm speaking from experience of so closed up. You gotta open it up, and you gotta be vulnerable and be sensitive,
right.
and talk about, what you're feeling, what's going on, when, what's going wrong, what's going right. And just, and the freshness and the newness, exploring new things. I mean, that's so important.
Bob, when I try to talk to this with grown men, they could be the coolest, toughest, roughest, cussing every other word guy. But as soon as you bring up, hey, let's talk about sex and your wife. Let's talk about that. Whoa, 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 whoa. What are you doing? We don't talk about that's inappropriate. I said, everything you've been saying is like the grossest, inappropriate stuff. But as soon as you bring up something healthy of intimacy, and I said, well, if you're not learning from anyone and no one's teaching you, where are you getting your resource? And he said, porn. And I was like, you're right. Because in the end, no one's there to talk to you about it. And you think it's so gross that your marriage is gross, you know, because you're not describing it, you're not expressing it, you're not pursuing it, you know. And this is a subject that, like I said, we could talk about for, I mean, I think someone told me there's a podcast that they do this stuff. They talk about these kind of things and they discuss it. And I'm thinking, good, but I feel like there can't be enough voices to try to shed light on it. Because if we hide in the darkness on this subject, it you literally feel dirty, you know. It's rather like, hey, why don't you come out and just say, hey, I had problems and I'm just getting it right. It feels way better than like, I hope nobody knows that I'm interested in the subject. And every guy is. I've literally talked to every guy about this, and the coolest, most spiritual guys have never talked about the subject. And they don't have the grace for it. And these are the most spiritual buddies and friends I have. They're so like, well, Paul, if your wife needs love and she needs pleasure, one of my buddies gave me this tip. He's like, if it takes her 5 hours to feel pleasure and love from you, you go down there and you stay down there for 5 hours till she gets it. I said, man, I don't need you on the call. You're gonna make us look bad, you know, because he was like, you do whatever it takes to help your wife. If that's what helps her, then you do that for her to feel loved and accepted. And I was like, no one thinks like that. You know, guys come in like, let me get what I want. But I figured like foreplay and the intimacy before sex amplifies it times 10. I don't know if you've noticed that. Does that work at all in your life like that, Bob?
Oh yeah. And this is something that you can see in tantric, in ancient Indian sexual practices. They practice, you just stare at your significant other for like a minute straight, and also set the environment, set the mood. Don't make it really cold. I like it cold in the house before I go to bed, right? I like it like between 62 and 68, like cold. So you have to move blankets. But when you're about to have a romantic experience, you make it hot, you make it warm. She doesn't want to be cold. Candles, they provide ambient lighting and good smells, and
Yeah.
clean up the place too. Don't leave like just stuff around. Clean it up, make it look nice, make it look like you tried.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just teaches you also to stare at each other, sit apart from each other and stare at each other right in the eyes
The
for a minute.
lotus position, man. That's called the lotus, Bob.
Yeah,
It's a
blossoming flower.
it's a beautiful thing, yeah, where you're looking at each other and it's very intimate. And I figure there are more intimate positions than non-intimate positions. But in the end, it's whatever works for you both, because it could work one way for someone and a different way for another. But you're right, the whole eye contact and the whole connecting, that's so key. Without that, it just feels very you know, clinical, like let's just get this over with kind of thing, and it doesn't produce.
So
You know,
key, and it gets you going as much as it gets her going. And then touch is so important. That was something that I like had a revelation about from reading some of this stuff. Was like they've said practice like closing your eyes and
Yeah.
focusing only on what you're touching, only on what you're feeling with your hands, and do that explorative touching with her. Like before you get into any sexual stuff, just like when they touch her neck, her arms, her body, just explore her body with your hands.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly intimate. That's incredibly intimate. That is so vital. Like eye contact, and do this, at your pace, at your
That's right.
leisure. Spend the whole night like exploring and having an intimate experience. And then
It shouldn't be a wham bam thank you ma'am experience.
no, but like after you have this groundwork set down, sometimes that's fun. Sometimes you can have a wham bam, and that can be a really passionate, intimate experience. And you guys have set a groundwork of intimate love.
Well, see, that warms up the pipes kind of thing. Because you don't just come into it. This is another one of those things. You don't just come into it raw dogging, as they would say. Just you're ready to go, but it's just like the intimacy creates the flow, creates the juice, the desire, the passion. Because if you're not dripping with passion, and the Bible says anoint your head with oil, Bob. So you better have some anointing oil nearby, because without it, I feel like this is middle school all over for me, Bob. This is middle school talk. The kind of stuff that you're giggling and you're enjoying talking about when you're in middle school and they're trying to teach about sex ed, and you're just like giggling the whole time looking at the girls. Anyway,
talk about middle school. I'm in the closet right now because my wife is on a lecture call in the other room, so I got to be quiet in the closet.
Hey, Bob, you got to come out of the closet, bro. I knew you're one of those closet guys. But you're right. This is something that I think is oh, by the way, if you see my pronouns, it's I am and he is. You better call me by my pronouns,
Oh,
Bob.
those are your pronouns.
That's my pronouns, man.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, everyone needs their pronouns, and I thought these are the best pronouns I can get. So
I love that. It's so new age of you.
Yeah, I have to, man. It's these young kids. They're like, what are your pronouns? I'm like, well, what are your pronouns? It's like, my pronouns are they. And he's like, well, you guys can all get out of here.
My pronouns are Charizard, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle.
Charizard, nice. Nice. But yeah, Bob, this has been a real fun topic, man. I definitely feel like there's so many angles to hit. My brother was saying, well, what if someone comes in and they're like hurting, or their marriage isn't doing too well, or the husband's sleeping around, or the wife is sleeping around, and then like, do you still be intimate? Like, there's so many variables that could get thrown in. And one thing I wanted to do was, this is just advice. This is not conduct. I'm not sharing what you should do in your marriage. I'm sharing advice, so then you can figure out how you want to apply this and conduct it in your life.
Right.
Because you can't just like force everybody, like, I have the answers and my marriage is flawless. I have things I'm still working through in my marriage. But as I'm noticing, I'm here to learn. I want to experience people's stories, and I want to hear people's examples and their struggles. Because some women I've talked to, grown women, they're depressed and divorced. And they're saying men are just so stupid. They're all stupid. I can explain to them and they just don't get it. They're so stupid. And I'm thinking, well, if you keep marrying all of them, you must be just as stupid as they are. You're marrying all of those guys and they're messing up, so.
No, that's a good point. We're not professionals. We're just having a talk that we pray blesses people and blesses us.
Yeah.
And something that you mentioned earlier that I wanted to just highlight was that, yeah, having these conversations is really, really important, because a lot of secular people are having them, and a lot of Christian couples are not having them, or they're having your bland like Christian sex talk,
Yeah.
and that's not helping them.
Yeah.
Your marriages are breaking up. You got guys cheating on their wives. You got wives cheating on their husbands, and it could all be avoided if they could just break off some of those
Yeah.
religious bonds and talk about going down on each other, talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
foreplay,
That's
talk
what I
about
said. I advise that to my friend. I'm like, do you do that with your husband? She's like, no. I've been friends with that friend for a long time, but why would I ever say that to her? And I'm realizing if someone's been praying prophetically for like 10 years and God still hasn't answered her prayer because everyone's too shy or embarrassed, and I'm embarrassed to say that to a friend, but in the end, I said, wash that thing and test that area out. Like, well, I'm not supposed to. I said, just wash it. It's not a big deal, you know? And it's just like I feel like we make things a big deal. And the reason I didn't apply this or didn't do this in my marriage was because everything I watched in porn always told me that that's what prostitutes do, you know, basically, or porn stars. So why am I going to bring something like that to a marriage? That's unholy. That's not pure. And for, I don't know, 5 plus 10 years, just, or 5 plus 8 years, whatever, we haven't done that. And I'm thinking like, well, that's one area in our life that's suffering. I was like, well, when you look at my wife, you'll know that she's not done that. So she's pure and all that stuff. But I feel like in marriage, this is a subject that needs to be covered, because you can't start saying this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, because everyone has a different experience. But we can't let the world tell us what's right and wrong. You know, if a woman has a clitoris and its job is only to receive pleasure, there's no other form factor that it has, why doesn't it receive it then? Why don't you give that to your wife? And a lot of guys, they don't know about that. You know, it's like, well, that would help her, and it would help her relax more and desire you more, because there's so much relaxing and enjoying that needs to happen. Because if a woman is stressed, there's no orgasms. We can get into the orgasm topic next time, but it's such
good.
an
I need
important.
to learn what that is.
Yeah, well, okay, so
No, but I
go ahead. That's a good subject. We can get into it more next time, but it's just
yeah.
such a good subject. It's like, let's
Well,
talk
the
about
diagram.
orgasms for an hour, you know? It's such an
You're gonna
important
orgasm
topic.
for an hour? I don't want to be on that talk.
Yeah, come on. Yes, you do, Bob. Come on. Come on. Come on, Bob.
No, but all seriousness, no, I like what you were saying there, because I mean, it made me think about the prostitute who kissed Jesus's feet
Yep.
and was crying all over his feet, and the guy he was with was disgusted, and she just said, she's kissed me 100 times, she's shown me love, and you haven't even, you haven't shown me love one time since I've been here. And to the Jews, the feet were the second most intimate spot of the person's body,
Huh.
second to your genitals, your genitalia.
Huh, I didn't know that, Bob.
That's I got some theology in my.
You got some foot fetishes? Nice.
And the second thing I wanted to say was that God made us for his pleasure. The Bible says that.
That's right.
Pleasure is perfectly fine if it's secondary to your relationship with God, because it's intimate with your relationship with God. In oneness with God is pleasure, is rest, is peace.
Yeah.
You're supposed to
That's
have
right.
pleasure with your significant other. That's the marriage. You're married, so now you're in the covenant. You're one with each other, intimacy. You're bonded to each other. You've made a promise to be with each other for eternity,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to be immensely pleasurable. The joy that filled Jesus is supposed to fill us. God is filled with joy. There's pleasure and joy and honor and all those things. And so kissing and kissing your significant other's body, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful thing. And yeah, it's something that people that couples should explore and enjoy and try, because when a guy is making his wife have incredible pleasure and joy, and then he's having incredible pleasure and joy, then when there's the climax there.
Yeah.
He's feeling amazingly good. They're both feeling amazingly good, and there's no need to. And you're gonna see other things open up. Like she might cry, she might laugh. She might laugh like so much. Be surprised, and you guys may have like just a new experience together.
Yeah.
Really
I'm looking forward to every experience in the book, Bob, because I think in life and marriage it should be that way. Constant getting to know your partner all the time. Constantly seeing something new about them you've never seen. Constantly and I think that comes with friendship and trust. And because if you don't have that, she can't be herself. She can't be open. She can't be honest. And I wanted to cover another subject of the wife having that trust and confidence in her husband, because I heard from another wife that's like, well, if my husband doesn't take care of me, provide for me, help me, how can I be intimate with him when I don't trust him and I'm insecure? And I was like, whoa, I didn't even realize that. And I asked my wife, is that true? She's like, heck yeah. When you're at home and you're broke and there's no money in the bank, I don't have desire for you. Like, well, I don't care. Do it anyway. It's like, well, I will do it anyway, but you can see that if there's desire, and women have to admit it around the board somewhere, that if you take all the money away, do you still have desire for your husband? Well, I do in the Lord. Do you have desire for your husband? No, or less of it, because money does seem to play, and that confidence and that friendship and that trust, all of that seem to play towards marriage, and a good intimacy,
Yeah. Well, if she's worried about like eating tomorrow, then she's not really going to be in the mood for making love, for having pleasure, if she's worried about where she's going to sleep the next day.
Yeah. Well, the guys don't care. No matter what happens, we're good.
Care. No, we don't care. The bird knows where to sleep. The fox has its hole, and
yeah, the guys are looking for a hole. So anyway, Bob, maybe it's a good cutoff point. But man, I definitely want to get into more of that, the depth of marriage that would improve on intimacy and what orgasm is. Because I heard another guy walk in, the lady's like, oh, my husband, or a boyfriend that she had, wasn't even married. I would hear his voice when he would come in the house, and just hearing his voice, I'd have orgasms. And I'm like, really? Yeah. And she's like, yeah, because I trust him and I desire him, and my body just quivers underneath his voice. And I'm like, well, that's scriptural, but I don't see that in marriage, when it should be there. But she's like, it comes with trust and desire.
Yeah, let's not invite them to the group, because we're still working on that. Still working on voice orgasm.
Yeah, Bob.
I'm gonna get to where I think about her, and then she's like, whoa.
Bob, but that'd be pretty cool, But I'm saying, I think in life there's going to be so many different things that I'd like to cover with these subjects, but I'm sure would love to hear other people's opinions. I wanted married women here, but I couldn't get the link to them, or maybe they were busy this night. But I wanted them to come on the call and just tell you, like a grown woman, how she opens up for her husband. It's mind blowing. Someone who's been married for 30 years and had sex a million times. Let them tell you what helps them or doesn't help them, or why the divorcees. I want to divorce women on here telling you why men are crap. And then I'd like to hear their perspective of, well, what can we expect from you, and what do you expect from us? Because I think that'd be so many beneficial, healthy debates here, So.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Maybe we could have a guest on next week on the Bob and Paul show, or Paul and Bob. Your name.
It'll be fun, Bob.
Yeah. So next topic, what we were talking about, orgasms next week.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the depth of friendship that would create that experience, because if you're not feeling trusted, secure, or confident, how can you do that? And I definitely would love other people's opinions and questions, because I know even if I put this on YouTube and people write comments or questions, I definitely love to hear it, because like people are curious. They're just not, confident. And I wasn't even confident to get on today. I was like, man, what if it's no good? And I was like, trust me, it doesn't get any gooder than sex. It doesn't get gooder. I heard, yeah, sex is like pizza. When it's bad, it's still good. It's still good. It's pizza.
That's a guy's perspective for sure.
Yeah. But, for a girl, it's like, no, it better be amazing. And it's just like, well, sure. Well, there's things that we can do to help you get there. And we'd like to know what you think you need to do to get there, because there's a lot to it. It's a very complex subject. But thanks for hanging out with me, Bob. And I'll let you go and put some of these things into practice, So
yeah, live long and prosper, my friend.
All right, everybody. We will definitely see you again on the next one next week, same time, same place. See you, Bob.
See ya, Paul.
See you, Anonymous 31.
Yeah, love you, man.
Yeah, or lady.
Or lady.
See ya.
Good night.